Did Mat Ishbia ruin the Phoenix Suns? Or people kind of overreacting? It's another edition of Southwest Bias.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.
Of course, brought to you by Branded Bills. Elevate your brand with Branded Bills, the perfect headwear and apparel. Use code PHNX for 20% off your first order. We're in Studio K, presented by Circle K. Download the Circle K app. Join the Inner Circle for free. It's Espo's triumphant return from the flu.
Yeah, I didn't have a Jordan flu game. I could not subject you guys.
Did you have a funky pizza about a week ago?
No. This was quantifiable influenza A.
You're not hungover?
I'm not. I am back, and I have some things to say.
Well, I know that you're itching to rip into all parts of the Phoenix Suns. You'll be back on our post-game shows this weekend. But this conversation about Mat Ishbia that we're going to get into after I thank everybody for liking this video and, of course, rating us 5 stars on whatever platform they're listening to on audio is bothering me, to be completely honest with you, because I see a lot of, has Mat Ishbia ruined the Phoenix Suns? And I'm not going to sit up here and say that Mat Ishbia has been perfect since he's taken over, or that every single move he's made in hindsight I agree with. But I don't know about you, Espo. That just feels like a step too far. The whole ruin the Phoenix Suns thing is just a little idiotic.
People like to pick and choose what they remember. People are like, oh, they had a 64-win season. They also got destroyed by the Mavericks in the finals. It was pretty obvious, or it's in the semifinals of the Western Conference. It was pretty obvious something needed to change. DeAndre Ayton, how dare they trade DeAndre Ayton? Well, DeAndre Ayton's time in Phoenix had worn out its welcome, and they had turned down so many trades of value throughout James Jones and the disgraced former owner's time that they had to settle for what was ever being offered at that point. Was it a great deal? No, they got crap in return, but you know what? At that point, DeAndre Ayton's value was kind of crap because you had backed yourself into signing him to a max deal, and now he's getting benched in Portland, a team that doesn't have hardly any talent, and they're benching him. Like there's revisionist history. And look, has every move worked out? Hell no. Did you expect to be 3 games under 500 at this point? No, not a chance. But the fact that he's willing to spend and be aggressive is something that has been missed in this town for so long. If it weren't for these second apron restrictions, nobody'd be saying crap.
Well, no, now. And that's part of it, right? Part of it is that as soon as Suns fans got an owner who's willing to just drop money to do whatever it takes to win, the NBA limits what you can do to win, right? And so now you're sitting at a point where you're dealing with the consequences of something that you'd been begging for. But when you were begging for it, like you were begging for it under different contexts and circumstances. But from a macro level, before we go micro and break down like some individual moves, I will always, and I will stand by this considering that we've seen the night and day difference between the disgraced former owner and the current owner of the Phoenix Suns. I will always take the owner who is aggressive. I will always take the owner who wants to be in win now mode and will do things like get a Kevin Durant on the team. I am not of the opinion that the Kevin Durant move was the wrong move. I think those who were opposed to it at the time have a better argument for that now. And I do think there are certain things from it that you wish, you didn't give up Bridges, Cam, and the 4 first-round picks. But getting Kevin Durant on your basketball team is not an easy thing to do, right? No. Getting superstar talent is not an easy thing to do. And having the balls to go for it is something that I like out of my owner. On contrary to somebody who will literally pinch pennies so you lose your stars, right? Like I'm always going to take the former in that situation.
Well, and at the time, in particular on the Kevin Durant deal, you looked at, they were floundering then as well. And then Cam Johnson was an injury-prone player. Like, would I prefer they hadn't dealt 4 first-round picks? Yeah, I'd prefer they hadn't dealt 4 first-round picks because of the way things are shaping up now. But when you look at it, you got Kevin Durant as a running mate to Devin Booker. If you look at year one, outside of the Kevin Durant ankle injury, they were very good together and pushed the eventual champion Denver Nuggets as far as anybody did in those playoffs. Have things gone well since? No. Like, no is a word I will say a lot in this episode, but I think you always take that chance on Kevin Durant. Now you get in some of the other things, you can debate about that and probably wind up on the side that maybe Mat Ishbia shouldn't have made those moves, but I'm not going to hold it against him for being aggressive, especially when it comes to a Kevin Durant and knowing who Kevin Durant is in this league. And if you look at what he's done since he's been here, the stats haven't dropped off. It's not because Kevin Durant fell off a cliff, that this team isn't playing well. It's a lot of other factors.
Yeah, and the same thing with Mat Ishbia, where, there's a lot of people around him who are involved in these decisions, right? Like your James Jones, your Josh Bartlesteins, your entire front office, your scouting department. And there's been a lot of good that comes with that. With the same way there's been a lot of good that comes with Kevin Durant, but then there's the imperfections, right? With KD, there's the turnovers side of it. For Mat Ishbia, it might be, being aggressive, but almost being aggressive to a fault. So let's unpack some of these moves, because I think you and I sit in the same place, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, where it's Mat Ishbia unequivocally did not ruin the Phoenix Suns, but he has made a couple of decisions that has led to, being in maybe, and this is a conversation for later in the season, depending on how things play out, maybe the worst situation in the entire NBA.
I don't know.
If you think about payroll, and if they miss the playoffs and they don't have their pick, that's a bad situation.
I know you said this might be look. If you look at it, you still have the break glass in case of emergency with this. That's the problem I don't like about this. Everybody's like, it's so dark. No, if you decide to blow it up, you still can trade Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and recoup a hell of a lot of assets to move forward. I can't do the Devin Booker
trade. Okay, look, we're gonna open up Pandora's box here. Maybe we could talk about that in a sec, but Devin Booker will not be on the table for me in any situation. So that's not even on my mind. Trading Kevin Durant, that's way more on the table. And nothing against KD as a player or as a person. But if I'm picking one, like even if Kevin Durant's been better, I'm picking Devin Booker.
Oh, I'm not saying – I'm saying if you go into full panic, we need to rebuild, this isn't going to win for 4 or 5 years because we're in such a bad situation, you have paths out. Where 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when the Suns were rock bottom, you had 0 paths out, and tanking failed you multiple times. So that's my only point.
And those begging for a rebuild, you know what? I'm guaranteeing you, this will be another topic for another Southwest Bias, because I think we could probably go about 45 to an hour on it. But those begging for a rebuild, I think you forget what a rebuild's like, right? So Mat Ishbia becomes the new owner, governor, whatever you want to call it, of the Phoenix Suns. And him in tandem with James Jones and Josh Bartlestein basically immediately trade Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, 4 first-round picks, and an unprotected 2028 pick swap for Kevin Durant, right? I'm still okay with that move. It's definitely rich. It's a rich deal, but I'm okay with that. Up next,
199 out of 100 times you do that deal, especially in that moment.
And then it's what comes afterwards, right? You fire Monty Williams. You hire Frank Vogel. Right after hiring Frank Vogel, you trade Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, and a bunch of first-round pick swaps and second-round picks for Bradley Beal and Jordan Goodwin. If we're talking blockbuster trades, big trades that you want to have back that I wouldn't make again, that's the one.
It's the pick swaps.
Yeah.
Right? If you do 1 first-round pick swap, that doesn't look as like,
or if it's one or the other, because like 6 second round. Imagine if this team had 6 more second round picks right now to deal.
I mean, has Bradley Beal worked out? No, but you can understand the basketball logic that you were flipping, Chris Paul and that money and Landry Shamet's money, who everybody agreed was an overpay by James Jones with Landry. And trying to get something that you were not going to have that ability to spend that money. You were not going, because you were going to cut Chris Paul.
Yeah.
That was the reality of it.
Hashtag Haynes briefs.
Like that was going to happen regardless.
Yeah.
So you tried to maximize that. Now, you could argue maybe you shouldn't have tried to cut Chris Paul. Maybe you should have just accepted that 1 year at that money and tried to figure out, is there a future there? Fine, but a lot of people had felt Chris Paul had hit that wall at that point. But I think that's where your argument is, if you have one. But I don't blame the aggressiveness of trying to find a way to keep that cap space that you were going to lose if you trade him.
Well, and that's also like there has to be, and I know this is really hard as a fan because there's emotions involved, but also just like the way that media and sports is processed at this current moment, where there has to be some nuance when it comes to these aggressive moves and understanding the situation. You have to just take a look at it and say, in every sport, on every major level, there are moves that in theory you think are going to work and they don't. And that there are universally beloved moves, there are universally beloved teams that people think are going to work out, and it just doesn't. And with hindsight, you'd go back and change it. Right now, with hindsight, I would want a leader like Chris Paul on this team. He's been healthy enough. I'd want those picks over Bradley Beal. But I can't lie to you and tell you that in the moment, I wasn't all on board with this because I thought this was a good allocation of assets. And I felt like Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant could fit together. And I was wrong about that. But I can't go back there and say Mat Ishbia's philosophy ruined the Phoenix Suns because I understand what he was going for.
But part of the problem is people wanted to distill it down to, I want to blame one person. And none of this can be blamed on one person. There's a lot of factors as to why this has not worked. And I think every single person involved is part of that. Mat Ishbia owns some blame. Josh Bartlestein and James Jones own some blame. Any coach that's been in that room deserves some blame. And every single player, yes, Kevin Durant included, deserves some blame for what's going on. You don't get to a point where you're 3 games below 500 with this much talent on a roster without multiple things going wrong and fundamental things going wrong, including the human element.
Yeah, there's no 30 minutes that could sum up what the one problem with the Phoenix Suns is, because there's not just one, right? And so continuing down like this timeline for Mat Ishbia, and like how did we get to a spot where this is even a conversation? Trading 2 first-round pick swaps to the Grizzlies for 3 second-round picks, and then an unprotected 2026 first-round pick swap to the Magic for 3 second-round picks. So basically turning picks that you'll still have, you're just going to get the worst of them to tangible assets. Then there's an offseason that everybody was excited about. Signing Eric Gordon, Drew Eubanks, Yuta Watanabe, Bol Bol, Keita Bates-Diop, Chimezi Metu, right? In the moment, people were excited about that. You thought you had a good allocation of your assets. You lose a second-round pick for tampering.
That's the most egregious.
Well,
you
honestly,
tampered for Drew Eubanks and lost a second-round pick.
To be honest, you know what else is kind of interesting is the campaign trade. Sending campaign and a second-round pick to the Spurs, basically for a salary dump.
Well, and there's no answer to that one. There's never been.
No.
And that's the thing that's so weird to me. Was there something with campaign? The salary dump makes no sense because you're already spending all that money. Using a second-round pick to dump it makes no sense. Like there's so many elements of that I want to know more about, honestly.
Yeah, and that's one of those small things where you're like, oh, maybe it wouldn't make that much of a difference. I feel like campaign, I know you love this word, as a vibes guy, as somebody in the way that he played last season actually would have helped. But that's the precursor to a trade that I'm going to say, and then we're going to unpack a little bit after a quick break, but trading DeAndre Ayton and Toumani Camara for Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, and Nasir Little. You put together a little hypothetical trade that was very instigator of you. I want to get into all of that after I remind everybody that this edition and every edition of Southwest Bias is brought to you by our friends over at Branded Bills. Both Espo and I rocking Branded Bills. I'm jealous of you, Espo.
This hat's one of my favorites.
And I say it all the time for non-hat related reasons that I'm jealous of you. But getting these Suns ones that you can only get at Footprint Center, like I've been fiending. I need to get down there because I got a ton of ASU hats. I have our PHNX custom hats, but I don't have my hands on a Suns one yet, and I need to.
I had to go with the alternate City Edition logo, just because it's cool looking, and then I'm not wearing a direct Suns logo over top.
Yeah, they have to earn that. They have to earn that from you.
I just, I didn't realize the hat was green originally.
It looked black in the picture.
But I actually like it because
it's a good look.
It's not bad.
And that's because it's good to look at. It's good to wear. The material of it is awesome. Like you look good, you feel good, and they have snapback truckers, fitted beanies or tees, and they can help you with custom headwear and apparel as well. well. They're a local company out of Mesa, Arizona, and you can head to brandonbills.com. Use code PHNX for 20% off your first order. And I want to make sure that you write down this number right now, 480-776-5231. That is the number for the Carol Royce Real Estate Team, family owned and operated locally in the Valley through 3 generations of family members serving the Valley of the Sun. They've sold over 12,000 homes across the Valley. She knows the Arizona real estate market. You're not getting somebody national who doesn't know where Greenway is or what the 51 is, right? Or what's out there at Signal Butte. No, you have somebody who knows exactly what's going on in the state of Arizona, and you can rest easy as a seller knowing you're not just making the right choice, you're making a guaranteed one. Your home sold for 100% of the market value, or Carol will pay you the difference out of her pocket. If you're considering selling your home in 2025, the name to trust is Carol Royce, your home sold guaranteed realty. If you have questions, call that number that I said at the beginning, or visit Carol online at carolroyceteam.com. That's carolroyceteam.com. We can talk about Bradley Beal. We can talk about Kevin Durant. Is the biggest mistake out of the big trades the one that sent DeAndre Ayton and Toumani Camara to the Trailblazers?
The biggest mistake was not trading DeAndre Ayton a year or two before.
Right.
Because he became a distressed asset and you were forced essentially to move him at that point. Is the way his welcome had worn out. Everything we had heard, it was intimated that Devin Booker and Kevin Durant were frustrated to work with him, that coming back was not an option, that DeAndre didn't want to do it. So you got backed into a corner because you decided not to make moves. And this is the James Jones part of it for me. Mm-hmm. You decided to not make moves. You had a chance at Domantas Sabonis for him. Said no. You had a chance at Miles Turner and a package of players. I think Buddy Hield may have even been part of it. No. All right. Well, then you backed yourself into a corner that at the point where DeAndre Ayton was at his lowest value, you had to trade him, right? In part because of the contract you signed him to. Now, the part of that deal that in retrospect, I wish you hadn't, don't give up Toumani Camara.
Yeah, but that deal's not getting done without Toumani Camara.
But then I think that's the interesting part to me, right?
Yeah.
Because that tells you how devalued DeAndre Ayton was. You were not getting anything else. If the holdup in the deal was we want Toumani Camara to do this, then it was never about DeAndre Ayton. It was more about Toumani Camara, and you weren't getting more value than what you got for DeAndre Ayton. Now, Yusuf Nurkic has fallen off a complete cliff this year. In part, I think it's because of the way they're using him in the offense. Was he great last year? No, but he was serviceable, and it was in part because he was part of the group running the offense, right? Now he's not. It's in Tyus Jones' hands or Devin Booker or Kevin Durant's hands, right? In that. So now is passing all this not of use. So he's fallen completely off a cliff. Grayson Allen, I don't know how he forgot how to shoot, but last year he was at least a plus in that deal because he had the best 3-point percentage.
It was,
right?
In looking back on it, I think as much as we would have liked Grayson Allen to shoot like that for multiple seasons, that's one of the best shooting percentage seasons of all time. He led the entire NBA during the 3-point shooting renaissance and era that we're in right now, in 3-point percentage on a high volume as a starter. I think he certainly should still be better this season, but I'm looking back at myself and I think expecting that out of him, it was always a long shot. But you're right, that was the best asset that you got out of this because Nasir Little ended up being a net zero for this team. Toumani Camara, as far as fit and player goes, is exactly what this team needs, and a quote-unquote locked-in DeAndre Ayton is exactly the type of center that they need.
That's the thing that drives me nuts, because everybody acts as if DeAndre Ayton, if you hadn't dealt him, would have been this locked-in beast.
No.
We saw it for, an 18-game run in the playoffs in 2021? DeAndre Ayton was never going to be that guy. He isn't that guy in Portland. It'd be one thing if he had turned into that in Portland and he was that night in, night out, but Chauncey Billups doesn't want to play him on a nightly basis on Portland's squad, all right? So anybody that's going this revisionist history that locked in DeAndre Ayton would have made the difference on this team. No, you would have gotten this guy, and locker room problems are already the issue, I think, that has started to take down this team, and vibes, if you will. If you had a miserable DeAndre Ayton last year, you're probably having the same result, if not worse, than what you had last year, because now you got a malcontent in the locker room, and we know how that can turn things downhill quick. So that drives me nuts that people are like, oh, well, DeAndre. No, you got on his ass for 5 years that he was here. Now that he's gone, you forget about all the warts. It wouldn't have changed that. So
it's the grass is always greener. And if you're in a situation now where this team is not 3 games below 500, and even if Yusuf Nurkic is being playable and the team was good and what we thought they could be this season, nobody would care. But since you're now looking at these past moves and where you end up, you get mad at them happening, even if in the moment they made sense, right? After that, you do the Royce O'Neal trade in season. You sign Thaddeus Young, Isaiah Thomas. Season ends, whatever happened there. Extend Grayson Allen, fire Frank Vogel, hire Mike Budenholzer, extend Royce O'Neal. And then you end up going through this season, and you're like, okay, we find ourselves kind of at another impasse for Mat Ishbia, right? But because he's aggressive, you can now look at the table and say Jimmy Butler could be somebody who's on this Phoenix Suns team. And no matter what, you're being led by somebody who, is he perfect? No. Has he made mistakes? Absolutely. But somebody who wants to and will do anything to be a winning team, which is not the situation that you're in right now. So you have to assume that they're going to throw whatever they can at the wall to try to fix or change something.
To me, the reason you go down this path is it's probably your one opportunity to get off the Bradley Beal deal, right?
Yeah.
So you take that opportunity and you take a chance because you still have Kevin Durant, you still have Devin Booker. Most people are like you I wouldn't trade Devin Booker at all. So you have to try to maximize it, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're not telling Devin Booker we're going into a rebuild. And we hope that these assets we accumulate from dealing a Kevin Durant can put us in a position to be good again in 3, maybe 4 years when Victor Wembanyama is dominating the West and you're in your mid-30s. So you cool with that? No. You're either going to commit to still being in it or you're completely burning it to the ground.
Yeah.
Because you're not putting Devin Booker in a situation where you hope some draft pick someday soon will turn out to be something. He's been there. He's done that. He's not going back there.
Yeah, whatever you get, if you end up trading Kevin Durant, it's not staying on your team for that long. You're probably going to hold on to some of it, but then you're going to siphon off 75, 80% of it and try to make another win now move on the margins.
Yeah, and look, I look at it and you go in on Jimmy Butler now. You try to make the rest of this season go as well as it can. See if you can catch lightning in a bottle. See if you sneak in and all of a sudden you pull a Miami Heat where Jimmy Butler is otherworld. Devin Booker and Kevin Durant turn it on for the playoffs like we've seen them do before, and something happens. But what I don't do is I don't commit to the Jimmy Butler extension right away. I hedge my bet and I say we're going to do it in June. If it falls miserably and you're not any better than where you're at, blow it up in the offseason.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't blow it up now for multiple reasons, one of which I actually think you could get more for both of those guys in the offseason than you're going to get now.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to go down the route of blowing it up and you can get rid of Bradley Beal right now and bring in Jimmy Butler and you test it, great. If you feel okay about it, commit to Jimmy Butler. I know everybody's worried about then all the first round picks go to the back of the. Well, guess what? You don't have those first round picks. Right. So who cares?
You're already in this situation. You've already somewhat dug your own grave. It's just whether or not you're going to get dirt put on top of you, and you got to scratch and claw and try to find a way to get out of it. And Jimmy Butler is your only rope. It's your only lifeline, but you're not even in full control of that. And that. Again, we have so many things that we can get into it. Even though the Suns aren't great, that doesn't mean there's not a lot to talk about. And that, of course, is where PHNX Suns comes into play. Nobody covering your favorite team like us here over at PHNX Sports, pregame, postgame shows, watch-alongs as well, Southwest bias, shorts, reporting, whatever it is, we have it right here on PHNX Sports. Hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that like button as well. The last point for did Mat Ishbia ruin the Phoenix Suns? That's in the no category, is all the off-court things that he did, whether
$2
it's
glizzies.
The $2 glizzies or like legitimately like investing in the community, making it more affordable to watch Suns games by giving them Suns Live and giving out the antennas, right? While he is still, there's still the really nice club now, the Rah Rah Club at Footprint Center. There's also, like you said, like the value menus, making it more affordable for families, all the stuff he's done with the Mercury, right? The investment he's done with the community, the Ring of Honor.
Not a total sleazebag
creep.
creep.
Absolutely. Like, Sean Marion, Amari Stoudemire, they're coming back home, right? Reimagined Ring of Honor with banners and murals, upgraded stuff for the media and the employees, their dining, their facilities, whatever it is. He has been getting it right off the court, and sometimes it's hard for fans to take that into account.
Look, are you in a better place than you were 4 years ago with an ownership group? Yeah. Yes. That's the answer here. You may not agree with some of the moves, and you may not have, even if it was a different ownership group and you had a front office that did this regardless. Was he aggressive? Yeah. May that have led to some mistakes? Sure. But I actually think he has put himself in a position to try to make this better for this fan base in the long run. And that's the big thing. Suns fans deserve the best in the league. Suns fans deserve quality both on and off the court. Mm-hmm. They've got the off the court now, and they've got to find a way to match it with the on court. And they tried to go all in. It hasn't worked. Now they have to figure out how to get there. And maybe taking that swing on Jimmy Butler, you test it, and then you go into more of a blow it up mode. But I don't think you can hold it against Mat Ishbia for genuinely seeming to want to do what's right by this fan base. And everybody was clamoring for a decade for a guy that would go in on all-in moves. You got it. It didn't work out. You have to accept that. And then we see what the next iteration is. But putting it on Mat Ishbia is ridiculous to me. And to the people that said they'd rather have the previous owner, you guys need to go get your heads examined by a professional, because you either need medication or a padded room.
On that note, make sure you follow Espo at Espo. You can follow the show at PHNX_Suns. You can follow myself and all my Southwest Bias journeys at ERIK. RUBY. If you're listening on audio, make sure you rate 5 stars, leave a review. Let us know how amazing we sound with our Branded Bills hats on, because that does make a difference. We will be back next week for more editions of Southwest Bias.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.
We all silly like the mayor.